When I got out the hospital, I went into depression because it was so beautiful there. And didn't nobody understand why I kept saying I wanted to stay there. You know, I've left here. I dropped this body and I was back home. And then you have to come back here, and I was just upset that I couldn't stay. There's no words for a lot of it, especially the love. I can't tell you how that love really is. It goes beyond human words. Everything is about love. But when I came back, I was different. And I didn't think like everybody else did anymore. I knew I was here to tell my story. That's my job now. My name is Brian Jordan, and I'm from Slaughter, Louisiana. My dad had an 18-wheeler. He owned his own truck. He was mostly a gravel hauler, so most of the time we grew up helping him. We were changing those tires like 8, 9 years old. We'd do all the flats when he'd get home. By the time I was 13, I was driving it, and 15, I was on the highway with it. So 15 years old, pulling 80,000 pounds. Me and my brother, we were pretty much men before we were boys. And I was never out partying, you know, that tight with my friends, because man, we were busy. Graduating high school, I was too young. Back then, you had to be 21 years old to have a CDL. So I went into the Army at 19. I went to Germany, airborne school in Fort Benning. I was there 3 years, and my last year was in Korea. After 6 years, I got out on an honorable discharge, and I got a job with my dad because he was working for this company, and that's how I started heavy equipment. And once I picked it up, that's all I ever wanted to do from then on. Pushing all that dirt or digging whatever, it's just the power of it all that I love. I didn't have much of an outside life. You would work 3 weeks straight, 21 days, 7 days a week, 12 hours a day. So all I know is work. I was in Pratt, Kansas, and we were building a wind farm. You know, the giant blades. I got up one morning, I went to work, it was a Saturday, and we were supposed to get off early that day. I was pushing with my bulldozer. I stopped at noon, and I normally would keep me some bread in there with peanut butter and jelly, a quick sandwich. I ate a sandwich, got back to work like 10 after 12, and that's when I felt the pressure. I felt pressure in my neck. And it was freaking me out. I'm like, well, what is this? I figured it would go away. So I kept working. And then it wouldn't stop. So I stopped the bulldozer and I climbed down off of it. The pain started going into my chest. So I went to my water truck driver and I had him take me to my medic. By the time I got to the office, I walked in, I said, hey, I need some Tums. And the reason I said that is because the pain that I had, it happened to me like a year before. I was working in North Dakota, actually, and I was on the phone with my girlfriend. And then as she was talking, it felt like a horse kicked me in my chest. And I told her, I said, hey, I said, my chest is hurt. And she knows I don't complain about nothing like that. She knew it was serious. So she said, call 911 right now, and she hung up. And I checked my pulse in my neck, and it was the heart. I couldn't believe that a heart can beat that way. It was all over the place. When I got to the hospital, they told me that it was heartburn. So here we again a year later, and I'm telling her, hey, this happened to me before, so I just need some Tums. And she gave me aspirin and Tums, and then she made me sit down. And then as I was sitting there, my arm started hurting. And that's when I knew, I said, okay, this is getting serious. And as I was sitting there, I started getting sleepy. And then I felt myself passing out. And so as I was falling to the floor, the safety guy was sitting right across from me, just like me or you right now. And the last thing I thought, I said, I hope he catch me, before I could just picture myself going face first into the floor. And everything went black. And I was in the stars. And so I said to myself, okay, I remember falling out that chair. So I said, I must be passed out, or I must be asleep. I'm figuring out I'm having one of these weird dreams because I didn't know what I was looking at. And I went to this cave-like place. It was huge. And the walls came down. And as the walls came down, they should have came down to a floor, right? But where they stopped at, where a floor should have been, there was no floor. So it was like looking down into the night sky when we normally look up. So I'm looking down, not realizing that I'm floating. Where the floor should have been, there were a walkway, square stones, side by side. So I looked right, and the walkway went down and went to the right and disappeared. I looked to the left to see where it was going that way. And it went into the wall maybe like 100 feet away. There was a door in the wall, and that door looked like the old castle doors with the curve at the top. When you say cave, most people think, oh, were you in hell or something, you know? But I had no fear there. No fear, I never feared nothing. And when I looked in the doorway, there was somebody in the doorway. And I'm looking, I'm like, wow, I can see through it like a ghost. I can see right through him. And he was just looking at me. So we were just looking at each other. And, you know, when you see something like that, you would get afraid. But I was like the cat, I was inquisitive. I said to myself, I want to go see what that is. As soon as "is" came out of my mouth or my thoughts, I took off like a bullet. And I was moving so fast that the sides were blurred. I was going so fast. And I got to the wall, that's when I was like, oh my God, oh my God. I said, humans don't move like that. How did I just do that? And I remembered why I went to the wall. It was to see who was there. And I remember, so I looked down below me, and there he was. But he didn't look up at me, he just floated along the path that I was looking at, the stone. And I watched him float all the way until he disappeared. And then apparently I went through the door because everything went jet black dark. You couldn't see your hand in front of your face. And all of a sudden I saw a light appear, and it looked like somebody had a flashlight, like they were searching. And that light fell on me, and it was so bright. If I had hands, but I went through the reaction of blocking the light with my hands. And that's when it took me in. And now the light wasn't so bright because I was inside of it. And it was soft. And so I remember I looked left, in front of me, right, and then down. And it was just this soft light. After a while, part I was facing started turning into a fog. And then the fog started clearing. And as I was looking, peering through, I could see a blue sky. And then that's when I got caught up. It felt like God he just grabbed me. And all I felt was this love, just powerful. It's like you get plugged up into electricity and you can't let go of it. And I was just like that, and it was just flowing through me. And all it was, the love was it was different. It was strong. It's something you never felt before, ever. And then I saw the words forgiveness, and then I saw the words love, and then I saw the words peace. And once I saw peace, I went back into the light and I floated out where it opened up. Each step that I went, I started losing Brian. And I never once questioned, hey man, you are in the sky. Whatever is happening, it was like my soul knew what was coming. I never had one bad thought. My mind was crystal clear. It was like the wind was blowing through it. There was not one worry in the world, because I felt incredible and I can do anything that I wanted. I knew that. And so I floated down out of the sky, and I floated to these pine trees. Pine trees have these needles. And as I was floating down, I could see every needle. Not one missed my eyesight. I saw all of them. And as I went down, I saw the tree go into the ground. And that's when I floated backwards. When I floated backwards, it was a drop-off. You know, like the California coast, you got these big drop-offs down to the water. Well, that's how this was. It was a big drop-off. And when I looked down, man, there was this garden. And they had, the flowers were so big, they were big as your dinner table. They were mesmerizing. They had so much life. You could feel it. And it felt like they were looking at me, even though they didn't have no eyes. Like everything was on me. And as I was looking at this garden, I can zoom in each flower that I want to see up close, while I was looking left, right, up, and all of that. And I was just zooming them in, you know, whichever one I want to see up close. And I was just floating to the right real slow and just taking all this love in from these flowers, you know? It was like they were alive. And then the channel changed again. I was in the blue sky. Nothing around, no land, no nothing. And then it seems like the sky, something shifted. And then there was these 4 bright lights. They were straight up and down, spaced. And I was like, okay. And they were getting bigger. They were coming towards me. And as I was waiting for the lights to come, a lot of small lights start popping up. And they just start popping up all around me. And then they was just swirling, doing a thing, man. And I'm like, wow. It looked like it was so many, and it was just all over me. And I felt that that was my family. All my family that has left. And so here they are swirling with these beautiful small lights. And when the big lights got there, they stopped about where you're sitting. And all the little lights that were around me started going to the top light, like bullets. They were just going to the top. And they start melting together. And next thing you know, I see a head. And as they were filling him in. And next thing you know, I see shoulders. Then the elbows, it's like he was holding his hands in the front, but you couldn't see because it's light. But you could see the elbows sticking out, either it's in front or it was in the back. So I watched all these lights fill this whole man up. And when that finished at the bottom, I looked at it, he lifted his head, and I was like, whoa. Man, I was freaking out because I was just looking at all this power, nothing but power. Then he started moving in the sky. He went up and down, across. He was just flying around, and he never stopped looking at me. When he would go up, his head would tilt over. When he'd go down, his head would lean back. He never stopped looking at me. And so then he came back to me, and then he took off really fast. He left so fast that there were traces of himself. So I watched till each trace disappeared. I opened my eyes, And my medic was on top of me, and she was pushing my chest. I was looking at her, and I said, hey. When I said, hey, she looked at me, and she just jumped off of me, right? And she was looking at me, her eyes were huge. And I said, what are you doing? And she said, your heart stopped. She said, Brian, she said, you died. I said, how long was I gone? And she said, 4 to 5 minutes. And I couldn't believe that. So you telling me I'm gone 4 or 5 minutes? I said, I was in the stars that length of time. Then I went to the cave and then to the gardens and then to the sky, and you telling me I was only gone 4 to 5 minutes when it felt like an hour? You know, I couldn't fathom what she told me. When I looked down, my shirt was cut open and the patches were on my chest and this machine sitting here talking. And that's when all reality started coming. I'm like, get me off of this floor. They got me up off the floor. My arm was hurting so bad and I started sweating, and all my friends and bosses, everybody was just against the wall. And here I am sitting there sweating, wanting to go to sleep. And so I looked at them and they would look away. They didn't want to see me like that. And so I heard something about a helicopter. So when I heard that, I said, oh, no way. I said, I'm gonna be paying for that thing for the rest of my life. So I kind of got a smile out of them, you know, helped them out, because what I saw, I wasn't afraid no more. I'm like, man, so y'all sitting here worrying about me. So I was the one making the jokes. Then the ambulance got there and they couldn't move me because of the distance. I was 80 miles from any major hospital. And so they put me in the ambulance. Once they hooked me up, I just went to sleep. This time, when I popped out of my body, I was like standing next to myself. And I was looking at my face. And my eyes were closed, and my head was laid to one side. And I was just standing there and just looking at myself. And I didn't even know what I was looking at. I didn't know that was me. I didn't want to have nothing to do with what I was looking at. I considered my body an it. When they revived me the first time, the way I ended that in that mind frame, I went into the second NDE with the same mind frame. And this time I was facing these flowers. And these flowers was in this big circle. So inside this circle was all these different flowers in their own groups. And I knew right when I saw it what it was about. I had no questions at what I was looking at. I tried to make a painting of it. This is what I tried to paint. I tried to make this is what I was looking at. So I took that as all of us are different. We have blacks, we have the whites, Chinese. Everybody in that group has their own color. But yet, all of these colors are still in the circle, which makes us one, regardless of what we look like. I automatically knew what that meant when I was looking at it. And I'm like, wow, we all here, but we fight amongst each other, but we still a part of the circle. There's nobody outside of the circle. From there, I was in space again, and I was looking at a blue planet. And it was so blue, super, super blue. And the colors there are I say 1,000 times more than the colors you see here. Super, super advanced. Just make you stare at them for nothing. And after that, there were flashes of other stuff. I saw so much, but those I can't remember because it was going so fast. I was seeing so much. So then that's when I popped back in my body in the ambulance. This time when I opened my eyes, the people in the ambulance, they was all huddled together and they was looking at me. And I was like, I was like, what happened? And the lady said, oh, we had to shock you. And then I could hear the helicopter coming. They put me in a helicopter and flew me to Wichita, Kansas. And once we hit the roof, they were ready. You know, they was it's a blockage, it sounded like a blockage. And they start running me through, and I could see the lights going like you see on TV when they're rushing the patients. And they got me in there and they took all my clothes off and they were prepping me for surgery. And I had this guy on my left side, working right there. And I had my arms on my side because I remember I was freezing cold. And when I opened my eyes, my arms were behind my head, up over. And so the guy was working, I said, hey. He said, yeah. I said, wasn't my arms on my side? And he like, you didn't feel that? I said, no, feel what? He said, man, when we shocked you, your whole body almost came off the table. And I asked him, I said, am I gonna die today? And he said, no, I'm not watching that. And so they fixed me. And the doctor came in and I was sitting up and he looked at me, he said, man, you're supposed to be on a ventilator. He said, you just had a massive heart attack. Your heart is mad, really mad. And here you are just sitting up talking to me like ain't nothing happening. You're not even supposed to be talking to me right now. And so they put me in the ICU and the nurse comes out with this paperwork. And she started going down and she looked at me and she said, oh my God. She said, you had a widowmaker heart attack. And she said, you only had a 10% chance of surviving that, even in the hospital. And I was like, wow, I was supposed to die that day. They kept telling me they was gonna put a pacemaker because I had to wear this vest. And that vest would shock me if my heart did anything out there because I was pushing out 30%, I think, or 35 when your heart's supposed to push out 55. So I wore the vest for 3 months and I went to the hospital and they did a check on my heart. And after they did the test, I was leaving and the doctor called my phone. He said, you could take that vest off. He said, Brian, he said, we've been doing tests on this type of heart attack since the 70s. And he said, your heart and one other person since the 70s healed all the way. He said, all you have is some scarring on your heart from them shocking you. He said, other than that, your heart beating just like mine. He said, you are a miracle. I'm not afraid to die anymore. I'm not afraid at all. When it happens, it happens. Don't cry over me, that's what I tell them. Don't you cry over me or try and pray to God to get me back here. No. When I got out the hospital, I went into depression because it was so beautiful there. And didn't nobody understand why I kept saying I wanted to stay there. You know, I've left here. I dropped this body and I was back home. And then you have to come back here. And I was just upset that I couldn't stay. There's no words for a lot of it, especially the love. I can't tell you how that love really is. It goes beyond human words. And so I wanted to find people like me. I started reading the NDE experiences. That's where I spent my first year. Just studying or finding or making friends with people. And I found so many that said the exact same words. Everything is about love. Now there's other people now I'm hearing saying the same thing. So I knew I wasn't crazy when I heard that. I knew I was here to tell my story. That's my job now. But when I came back, I was different. And I didn't think like everybody else did anymore. I was raised in a hellfire church. You have to have a Holy Ghost. You better obey the Bible and all this stuff or you'll never see heaven. That's how we were raised. I died 3 times and not once did I see a hell. And I felt like a God, and I'm just a normal person. I wasn't in nobody's church. I believe in God. I love God since a child, but I always had questions like, why is this God so mad? Or why put us here? And then we got to have rules to leave. It made no sense. And so after I came back, I saw things totally different. I don't judge nobody by their religion, because I one time believed a certain way that I was taught. So I can't judge you, for believing what you have, because you haven't died and seen it. But when I came back, I didn't see people anymore. I saw souls. And that's how I live my life now. I won't look at you as anything but a soul. And I try and help everybody that I can, and most of the time don't look for nothing back from it. Because it's material. Your material things, all of that change. It's not important no more, because you're not taking it with you. And so the stuff that I used to worry about, I try not to anymore. Help who you can, when you can. That's all God wants. We're here to help each other. And if you can't find a way to do that, what else is there?